Welcome inside episode 599 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, and it finally happened. The Ottawa Senators traded goalie Matt Murray to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Ooh, this is a juicy trade to break down, Ross. We're going to talk about what this does for the Sens cap situation, what the crease is going to look like next season, and how can this affect free agency coming up?
Oh, you should have seen what Darren Dreger said last night on Jay Onright's show. We'll get into all that, plus a look at Sens development camp. All that and more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Tuesday, July 12th. We are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like the videos by clicking the thumbs up, subscribing to the Locked On Senators channel, and leaving a comment. Today's comment, we want to know your thoughts on the Matt Murray trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if you missed it, another reason to subscribe on YouTube is we put out immediate reaction videos. I had mine last night. Pillsy, before I get yours, I'll run through the administrative part of the trade. The Ottawa Senators send goalie Matt Murray and the 2 years left on his contract to the Toronto Maple Leafs with a third-round pick coming up in the 2023 draft, a seventh-round pick in the 2024 draft, and Ottawa will retain 25% of Matt Murray's contract, which means $1.75 million in real money this upcoming season and $2 million in real money in the final year. Works out, I believe, to 1.68 against the cap.
This is just incredible piece of work by Pierre Dorion. And look, if we're going to spend time bashing him for how the last couple of years have went, we have to spend time praising him for when he's doing things right. And he has been hot this week. Like, a lot of this offseason checklist, Ross, was more about subtraction than addition, sadly. But the subtractions have been happening, and they've been happening perfectly. Like, the Colin White buyout needed to happen. He had to go. It made too much sense with the 1/3 buyout. Matt Murray, it just wasn't working out. Like, ever since the demotion to Belleville, you could tell the writing was on the wall that these two sides were not going to mutually agree and things weren't going to work out for the better. So he had to find a trade partner. We didn't think the trade partner would be the Toronto Maple Leafs, first of all, and that all they would have to give up is a third-round pick, and the Sens are just tossing around third-round picks. Now they don't have one in 2023 or 2024.
You know what? Ever since Pierre Dorion took so much heat for giving up a third-rounder for Travis Hamonic, he's like, you think I care about third-rounders? You can have one, you can have one, you can have one.
I don't give a damn about third-rounders.
Oprah.
Yeah, and I love how that 2024 7th-rounder gets added to that deal. Like, what a random little... there's your sweetener, Leafs fans.
You know what the best part is? Because this trade was intensifying on day 2 of the draft. It was intensifying on Monday morning. It was getting close to completion in the afternoon. It finally happens at around 7 o'clock Eastern time last night. But was that 7th round pick like a 24-hour delay? After, I thought this was going to be the most complicated trade in NHL history.
We thought there was going to be another team involved. There's cap circumvention happening, all this kind of stuff. But
Matt Murray's the starting goalie of the Toronto Maple Leafs for a $4.8 million cap hit, not only this year, but next.
But Ross, I've tried. I cannot, other than the Sioux connection, which we know Kyle Dubas is obsessed.
I got a story about that too.
Well, isn't one of the goalie, someone that works in the goalie department for the Leafs as well, had a Sioux connection too. So I think that's where some extra confidence was put into Kyle Dubas. But
well, Simmer came out and said this. When Matt Murray was the goaltender in the Sioux, and this is unconfirmed, I need to go double check this because, Simmer sometimes just has fun on social media, but I believe this makes sense. And maybe I'll look it up after I say it, but I'm pretty confident in it already.
We don't fact check on this show.
They when they had Matt Murray, they didn't trust him completely. So they went out and traded for Jack Campbell.
Wow. Oh, how the tables have turned. That's very ironic. That's a good little nugget there. But yeah,
Or Simmer. So if it's wrong, it's Simmer's fault.
KRLK. But if what I can't wrap my head around is why the Leafs went out of their way. They traded down to get rid of a goalie who, when he's hot, he's hot. He's not healthy very often. You can't rely on him in the big moments. And when he's terrible, he's terrible. I'm talking about Peter Mrazek. And then they went out and they acquired a guy who has the exact same kind of attributes. When Matt Murray's good, he's good. And I don't care, Sens fans, if you don't like him, whatever, we can move on from that. But if you can, it's small sample sizes, and I know I'm cherry picking here, but when you take a look at the stretches when he was good, he was very good. But they were so far and few in between that you cannot have a goalie that you're paying north of $6 million for on a 4-year contract putting up that kind of production and playing those types of games for you. They had a goalie like that in Mrazek, and they said, this is not going to work out for us. We cannot rely on him. And then they go out and get a guy at a bigger price tag with arguably more injury concerns. Now, sure, does Mrazek have 2 Stanley Cups? No. Does Mrazek have the playoff experience? No. Is Mrazek in his 20s? I don't think so, at least.
Yeah, he's 29.
Okay,
maybe
so
30.
he's older than
Correct.
Murray.
He's got 2 or 3 years on Murray for sure.
So, okay, that makes a little bit of sense there. But I don't know what the Leafs are going to do, but if their plan is to have Matt Murray as their number 1 starting goalie, even Matt Murray as a 1B is very risky. And for a team that has kind of trying to every year, this is our year, we've got all the pieces in places, I don't see how the management can come forth, the Leafs fans, and be like, no, now we have our piece in place. We have Matt Murray.
Well, Leafs Nation did a great job of going from asking for Pinto or Greg or Connor Brown. We even saw Batherson, his name thrown out, and 50% retained. All of a sudden, when the trade went down, they're like, okay, we got a 2-time Stanley Cup champ. It's more Ottawa's fault.
Look at the playoff stats for Matt Murray.
But then they'll turn around and say that Ottawa can't talk because they haven't had any playoff success. The last time Matt Murray had playoff success, Ottawa had playoff success. They were in Game 7 against each other, double overtime of the conference finals. So if you're going to use one to strengthen your argument, you really can't be using the other to put it down, because both have been mediocre to not great ever since.
Yeah, and that's the issue. Like, Matt Murray's contract, from the day it happened,
we were cautiously optimistic, but we were the ones using the 2-time Cup champ. But even then, didn't it seem like it was a while ago? That was 2 years ago.
Yeah, and he only really had that one kind of off season right before he came to Ottawa. So it was like, okay, he's not far removed. He's still in his middle 20s. Like, there's hope here. And sure, the Sens overpaid for him, for sure. But that was a part of getting a top-end talent goalie to Ottawa. At the time, it made sense. And at the time, there was no cap concern for Ottawa because they didn't even have guys lined up ready to make big contracts yet. Everyone was still on their entry-level contracts. It wasn't a problem at all. But now it's become a problem because Pierre Dorion sees this team in a spot where if you put the right pieces in place, get Alex Brinkett, get another top 4D, that Matt Murray contract is going to be an issue. And he had to move on from it, and moving on from White and now Matt Murray, now only one left on the docket in Nikita Zaitsev.
Yes.
This team's all set up for success, at least set up to bring pieces in to be set up for success. So Pierre Dorion said it, Ross, and we kind of laughed tongue-in-cheek. He said, don't judge me after trade deadline. Judge me and how this roster looks in September. Well, he's doing a pretty damn good job. And sure, there's still the Norris contract. There's still a lot of RFAs to be done.
But what about that 3rd-round pick that we missed out on because of Travis Hamonic?
Yeah, not too worried about that now. But those are all in-house things. So those are things he can have control of. They can take a little longer. He can work on those once free agency is in place and you kind of see where your cap is at from that point. Right. So I think the Sens are in a great position here. Pierre Dorion's in a great position to make big splashes in free agency. And it's weird, Ross. Like, we're going to have to change our mindset from talking about the kind of lovable losers of the Ottawa Senators. Sure, they have fun. We got Tim Stützle, we got Brady Tkachuk. Like, there's a lot of fun stories, but we're losing hockey games, and there's no meaningful games in sight. Now things are different, and I think we kind of had the now things are different with the one off season when they brought in Dadonov, when they brought in Murray, but this is that on a whole nother level because they're not banking on guys bouncing back. They're getting guys at the right time.
Yeah.
They're moving on from guys who they know are too old, and the big splashes of the offseason aren't Michael Del Zotto and Nick Holden. Like, finally, things are legit, and things are looking up for the Ottawa Senators.
So I was right, or Simmer was right. They did acquire Jack Campbell in Matt Murray's second season in the Sioux. Great storyline there. We're going to get into what Ottawa can do, and we'll get into the finances a little bit more. How much money has Ottawa saved, even though they've acquired a $9 million player? Yes, the 6.4 cap hit for Alex DeBrincat, but $9 million in salary for him, and yet they've still saved money this offseason between Matt Murray and Colin White. And when it comes to Matt Murray, we knew the contract was rich, but Pilsy, the way it was backloaded for 2 years of Matt Murray, and with his 10 stints on the IR, insurance covers a little bit of that money. So Ottawa only paid him $4 million in year one and $6 million last year. So $10 million over 2 seasons. Yes, for 47 games rather. You probably would hope for a little bit more out of a potential 138 games, but I don't know. The Leafs,
and the Leafs don't care about real dollars, right? So for them, they're like, we don't care about the real dollar situation. And the Sens only have to eat 25% of this. Like when we were talking yesterday, Ross, I was like, for this deal to get done, and especially only with the Leafs, they're going to have to retain 50%. Like, why would the Leafs only accept a deal of 25%? Because they're not going to be able to sign another goalie. Little did I know, Kyle Dubas, apparently, it seems like, is of the mind that Matt Murray is going to be their number one goalie.
Yeah, he's also a Sens fan. Maybe they just had to throw in a Wade Redden autograph. I think I saw Steve on Sens put that on Twitter. What's holding up the trade is, he said, can I get Wade Redden's autograph? Now working again in Sens development team. A little segue there because we will touch on Sens dev camp. Jake Sanderson, not on the ice. Is that for cause of concern? We'll also get into the Matt Murray contract again and how the Senators can utilize that money, including what I said off the top, Pilsy. Give him a little tease. This Darren Dreger clip that we're going to play from Jay Onright. Like, how confident does that make you that we could bring G home?
It definitely sounds good, but Ross, until more things materialize, I'm not going to get too excited because we've been hearing the same things over and over. It's just now different adjectives are being used in these sentences. So it feels good, but until things materialize, I'm gonna sit patiently.
Well, if
you don't have to wait too much longer, though.
If he hasn't been convinced already, and tomorrow we're gonna do a full free agency preview and, of course, from a Senators angle. But if we haven't convinced Claude Giroux yet that it's time to come home to Ottawa, maybe a couple Built Bars could be thrown in the mix because summer's already here, and Built Bars are the perfect thing to take with you, whether it's a summer vacation, a day out, checking out your local beautiful weather. If you're in the Ottawa area, it's great to go down to Parliament, check out the locks. You can go anywhere and bring Built Bars with you. The best part, too, is that if you go for a run every day, sometimes you want to change up your routine. Why not just grab a different Built Bar every day? And with all the flavors that you can get with Built Bars, it's easy to have something fresh, delicious, and healthy each and every day without feeling like you're just doing the same old routine. All Built Bars are 100% covered in real chocolate, but they only have like 120 calories. It's crazy. Most candy bars have 240, but with Built Bar, it's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and we recommend getting the mix box just for that reason. I like mixing it up, a little bit of variety, the spice of life, as they say. And with Built Bars, they do just that. Have you tried the Built Puffs yet as well? Those things are absolutely ridiculous. It's a marshmallow-infused protein bar. Yeah, a marshmallow-infused protein bar. Completely ridiculous and even better than it sounds. They come in churro flavor, banana cream pie. You got to check them all out at Built.com. So go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your first order of Built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. You are listening to the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller and Pilsy. This feels good, man. This is a run of unparalleled success. You can really say that for how Pierre Dorion has attacked this offseason so far. And we know that the best is yet to come with free agency opening tomorrow. Before we get into all that, we got to mop up this Matt Murray trade a little bit because we spoke about what this means and why the risk factor is there for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But for the Ottawa Senators, they are clearing up what would have been, because some people are like, just buy him out. Don't give up assets. If they bought out Matt Murray, they would have had to pay him $10 million out of the 15 for him not to play there. Instead, they give up the value of a 3rd-round pick and a 7th-round pick. And instead of paying $10 million, they're on the hook for $3.75, and a buyout would have extended it to 4 years. Now it's just 2 years. Boom. That's a little clean, tidy bit of business. And you know what? There's probably some Pierre Dorion haters listening to this, and maybe they're not going to believe in him until he can build a defensive core. That's really been the thing plaguing him. But Pilsy, he didn't have to give Matt Murray this contract in the first place. I mean, it does have to be said here that he is mopping up his own mistake.
Yeah, but I think like I mentioned before, the Sens didn't have any cap issues, so if you had to overpay to really secure him and they felt he was going to be the goalie that brought them out, I didn't have a problem with it then, and honestly, I still don't have a problem with it now because it's what they felt they needed to do, and these things are going to happen. I don't think anyone thought Matt Murray's health was going to deteriorate the way that it did. Like it really got out of hand there. And the thing too is, for people saying why didn't they buy him out? Well, he's at a point with his health that they're not really sure if they can buy him out, and now the buyout option ends today, so they didn't have time to wait for that option anyways. And like you said, this is thank you, Kyle Dubas, this is way better than a buyout option would have been. And the Senators, they already have a decent amount of dead cap money. Like this year, Ross, they've got $4.5 million in dead money. So you don't want to add more buyout money to that and have that extended part there. And look, Pierre Dorion said it, and he said it over and over. We're comfortable having 3 goalies.
No, you aren't.
I don't think that was ever a thought that legitimately went through their mind. Like, if September rolled around, they would have done something desperately to move one of those goalies. Like, there's no way they actually thought they were going to go with 3. Zach Burke wouldn't have it. He, as a goalie coach, you can't have it. It doesn't make sense. So it's great that they finally moved on from that. So now, Ross, we got to take a look at the crease. How comfortable are we going into next season with a Forsberg-Gustafsson tandem? I'm very comfortable in Forsberg. I have no issue having him as a 1A guy. Am I comfortable having him as a premier starter and then having Gustafsson as a traditional backup? That I'm not so sure of.
Yeah, well, you look at the names that are on the market, and it's not a who's who of starting goalies. It's a lot of guys. Like Jack Campbell's probably the crown jewel of the free agent market here when it comes to goalies. So,
well, Kemper.
Who's the better goalie? Like, I don't know. I wasn't sold on Kemper, but yeah,
He
those
won
are
a Stanley Cup. You gotta give him that.
Yeah.
Well, Pavel Francouz did a lot of the lifting in that one.
Yeah, 7-0, I think he was in the postseason. But when I'm looking at the goalie market, and I'm looking at, you have to at some point just give Gus the reins, at least as a backup. And I know you were preaching that all season long, how they really just yanked him around, didn't give him an opportunity to get settled in one spot. I'm a lot more critical of Philip Gustafsson than you are, and I'm just so confident in Anton Forsberg. I know a lot of people are going to turn their nose up at that and say sample size, but this guy looked unbelievable last year. He gave the team a chance to win every single night, and we talked to Matt Sogard about this. His work ethic is going to allow him the opportunity to have an even better second round. Like, I don't see a slump coming from Anton Forsberg. If anything, I think this extra boost of confidence will just give him more opportunity to be the goalie that we expected him to be last season. Or maybe didn't expect him to be, but what he became last season.
I was going to say, I did not expect Anton Forsberg to have that type of season as Ross runs to get his charger, as his laptop is dying. Very typical Ross here, but I'll just take over. I'll tap dance. I did it for a week. I can do it for a couple minutes here.
Oh, we're golden.
He's quick. That's a good NASCAR pit stop podcast edition here. Plug it in the laptop. But the thing, like, going from what did Forsberg play last year? 30 games, 35?
More than Murray.
Yeah, I mean, that's not hard to do. But going from playing like 40 to 60 games is a big deal. And then having Gustafsson going from playing a handful of NHL games to being the guy that's going to have to step in.
Played 46.
Yeah, okay. So add another 15 games onto that, and then add kind of the pressure of knowing the guy behind you really cannot take over. Like, you need to be the guy now. And I think Forsberg can do that, but is it going to happen right away? That's where I'm going to be interested to see. And how much confidence can Philip Gustafsson hold in a backup role where he's not going to be playing very often? He's going to spend a lot of time on the bench. Now, I know he's kind of used to that routine with the Senators because they didn't have him playing consistently for much of his time here. Right. But what Philip Gustafsson are we going to get? The end of 2 seasons ago where he was one of the best goalies in the league, and that's not even a hyperbole. You can check the stats of his sample size at that time. He was one of the top goalies. Or last year's Philip Gustafsson, where
never knew what you were going to
get. But even at the AHL level, you didn't have a lot of confidence that he would shut the door. So I'm very interested to see how this happens. But the Senators, I feel like this is kind of their, all right, we've pushed a bunch of stuff together. We're melting it in the pot. Let's see how it goes here. So there's not that full pressure on the goalies to carry it, but we're gonna see what we got from Philip Gustafsson this year, because he's an RFA. He's got his 1 year, one-way deal this year. That was another reason why one of these goalies had to go, and it was going to be Matt Murray. I think we all figured that. So it's going to be very interesting. And you know what? Maybe we'll see a little bit of splashes more of Mads Søgaard coming up to the NHL, trying a couple games here and there, because he's able to go up and down with his contract. So very intriguing times for the Ottawa Senators in the crease. And Ross, to have your starting goaltender at under $3 million, wow. Like, not many teams in the NHL can say they've got that. So, like, the Ottawa Senators goaltending tandem is 2.75 plus 787. So it's like $3.5 million, a little bit more. My math's
3.375 in salary, because it's Forsberg's making 2.55, but his AAV is 2.75. So they're making less than half of what Matt Murray is going to get in salary alone next season. Now, yes, Ottawa's covering 1.75 of that, but all that to say, man, I think that was a tidy bit of business here for Pierre Dorion. Now, what he also did was create more flexibility going into free agency, because even though they added $9 million player, as I said earlier, they still have saved money between the buyout to Colin White and getting rid of most of Matt Murray's contract, 75% of it, that is. And could that mean that Claude Giroux is coming home? There's some other options we'll get into tomorrow if it doesn't work, but it just seems where there's smoke, there's fire. We've seen Claude Giroux's already back home. He's been in Ottawa the last 3 weeks, and it just makes so much sense. Now, we've heard it, like, what's the strongest adjective you've heard before Darren Dreger, which I'll play in a second here, about Claude Giroux coming to Ottawa? Because to me, it's been like Pierre LeBrun being like, oh, it could be a fit. It could be an option. It might be a fit. Like, to me, there hasn't been anything as concrete as what Darren Dreger just said.
Yeah, I would agree. On 32 Thoughts, they were talking about it, and Elliot Friedman said it's really looking like it's a possibility. Like, I think the thing that gives me comfort, Ross, is Ottawa was always in the mix, and it's only seeming more and more positive as we've gone along. Like, it's not like Claude Giroux, it was like he's going to Florida or he's testing free agency. It's kind of been...
Florida has no money.
Yeah, Florida's going to have a tough time figuring that out, but it's kind of been... Florida's where he wants to go, but if that doesn't work out, then Ottawa's option A. That's how it seemed this whole time, and now it's seeming more and more like Florida's not going to work out, and more like Ottawa is the number one option. And if you're Claude Giroux, now you're looking at the Senators. This is not last year's Ottawa Senators. This is a whole different vibe, a whole different roster. You look at the improvement Tim Stützle had in the second half of the season. You look at all the injuries that Ottawa had throughout the season that really hindered them. You look at all the COVID issues. Like, there's so many factors that if you can take out even one or two of those major factors that derailed Ottawa's season, Matt Murray being one of them, he's now gone. Everyone's looking healthy coming into camp. You add a 40-plus goal scorer. Like, why wouldn't you want to come to Ottawa if you're Claude Giroux. Now, a lot of people will say he was chasing the cup in Florida, didn't get it. Is Ottawa on the cusp of a Stanley Cup? No, and you can't sit there and Ross. If you're about to say that, I'm gonna pull you back a little
I'm
here.
not.
Are they serious playoff contenders with this roster? I would say so, but
especially with Boston going through what they are with McAvoy, Marchand, all out of the lineup to start the season.
Well, and when the Leafs have a goalie that you can't rely on for more than 25 games as their number one guy, that helps too. Like this is a year where it makes a lot more sense. And then Tampa, every year, Tampa gets a little bit weaker. They lose a little chip. No Ryan McDonough now. So the division is getting more, it's more feasible to be like, we can find a way to get a wild card spot here. We can make this work. So if you're Claude Giroux, maybe if you're cup chasing, I mean, no, it's probably not going to be a thing this year. But if he signs a 3-year deal, those second and third years, if everything works out for the Sens, you can see the makings of a team that has everything, and they need a veteran like you, Claude. The Ottawa Senators want you.
And right after a quick break, we'll let you know exactly what Darren Dreger said and then touch on Sens development camp. All that coming up right here on Locked On Senators. All right, Pillsy. So we've teased it. This is the clip. Darren Dreger last night on Jay Onright's show on TSN.
And then let's look to Wednesday, Jay. And this is going to be one of those big splash opportunities again for Pierre Dorion. Because of everything that I've just said and the moves that he's made, I think there's an excellent chance that Claude Giroux signs with the Ottawa Senators as a free agent. So the Senators that we saw finish the season well out of the Stanley Cup playoffs, they're making a huge push next season. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, so an excellent chance. I like the confidence in which he said that. Do you think if it happens, Pillsy, this is the type of move that comes together at 12:05 Eastern? We always see that initial push in free agency. At what point are we going to pull the panic button out? If it's day 2, day 3, day 4, or is this something that you're willing to be patient with?
Well, Ross, as we all know, it is not legal for teams to be talking to free agents, so no deals will be done right away, right? Like that can't happen because no teams are going around the NHL and figuring out ways to get these deals done before. That's not a thing.
Never.
Yeah, that would never happen. I'm not going to be a quick panic button guy. Like,
okay.
Even if it goes a day or two, I'm not going to be panicking because
if it gets to the end of the month when you're away and then I'm away, I'm going to be sad.
Okay, yeah, we're talking weeks at that point.
Okay, so you're drawing it has to be in the first week.
Yeah, I'll give it a week because
you're worried then if he doesn't sign, maybe there's a little talk with Florida. They're like, hey, give us time. We are going to move money. We're going to make it work. You're coming back. That would be where I start to get worried.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to see it shake out. Like everything has been so unpredictable. Like the draft totally threw everyone for a loop in multiple areas. Like I think teams are really, because now that kind of teams can see revenue can come back out of the pandemic and there's ways that they can form revenue. I think a lot of teams that were kind of hanging in the shadows the last 2 years are like, okay, we're ready to make a big splash. And I think there's going to be some big movements. So I'm not going to really form an opinion of how the landscape's going until things shake out a little. But the thing that will give me comfort, Ross, is, again, all these insiders are saying Ottawa seems to be the best landing spot. There's no other teams other than if he goes back to Florida.
I'm worried about Carolina. They have cap space, but they're also about to lose Niederreiter, Trocheck, and then they still have an RFA and Martin Nescash. So I don't know, but they seem like kind of an undercover. Pierre LeBrun brought that up, and I know that LeBrun is very close with Carolina Hurricanes owner Tom Dundon. So I don't know if
does Giroux want to go to Carolina? Like I feel like that's like the middle ground in between Florida and Ottawa. Like,
yeah,
either go to Florida, get your cup, or come to Ottawa and build a team that can win a cup. Carolina, they've got a great team, but I don't think they're on the cusp of winning a cup. Like, I think they're going to be a team that they're going to make the playoffs. They'll probably win a round or two, but I don't see them going all the way, especially when they lose all those depth pieces that you talked about. And especially the way they run that organization is very kind of cutthroat. Like they're not looking to do anyone any favors. So if he decides to go there, it's not going to be at a big ticket price, and it's probably not going to be on the terms that he's looking for. So I'm not that worried about Carolina. I'm not worried about Edmonton. I'm certainly not worried about the Leafs now. So it seems good. My panic button is tucked away in the drawer, Ross.
All right. Well, we'll get into a lot more of this type of conversation tomorrow when we do a free agency preview right here on Locked On Senators. Of course, if there's any breaking news, subscribe to Locked On Senators and put your notifications on, and you'll know when our videos go live. We always like to get a 2, 3, 4-minute video out right away, breaking down our initial reaction, because that's what separates Locked On NHL from other networks, is that we are local experts on the biggest stories. And at the end of the day, we're fans too. So you get the passion of a fan with the insight of people that do this day in and day out. 599 episodes, Pillsy. It's pretty fitting that as the NHL calendar changes to next season, as it does every year on July 1st usually, but this year on the 13th, that our show flips to the 600s of episodes. So stick taps to you and stick taps to me for hitting another milestone there. Although the next big one is 1,000. That's what we're working towards right now. Pillsy, the Ottawa Senators prospects were on the ice yesterday, but no Jake Sanderson. He is skating on his own with Barb Underhill a little bit, Shelly Kettles a little bit, the Senators skating coach. So he is on the ice, but we saw he's still wearing the brace. Are you worried at all as the calendar turns? And he's not going to the World Juniors, but we think that that's more, they expect him to be an NHLer at this point in training camp.
Yeah, Jake Sanderson's not going to the World Juniors. I can say that pretty confidently. And all he has to get ready for is training camp. That's months away. And am I worried about Jake Sanderson's development? No. If he misses a dev camp, it's not the end of the world. If he has more time to recover and he's able to skate, that's a good sign. So to answer your question, no, I'm not worried.
Okay. Perfect. We mentioned yesterday, Tyler Clevin not there, just to touch on the Nodak Sens there. Again, we're wishing his family well. There was a death on his mother's side, grandmother. So he's unavailable, but it's not for any reason outside of that. They believe he will be signed at the end of this North Dakota season. Pillsy, another reason why we got to get you to the Ralph, because that is a special barn. And this is potentially the final season for a little while, as they've moved on to Ohio State and UMass with 2 prospects at each of those universities. But we'll always have the bubble, the NCHC pod, Pillsy, with the 4 Nodak Sens. Yeah. Meanwhile, at Sens development camp, the buzz coming out from day one, we know our boy Kevin Hemina was there. We know that Scott Dunlop was there. People were tweeting at us, boots on the ground. We love that. Absolutely love that. Keep them coming. They're all open to the public. I've got the schedule up here right now, but how about this, Pillsy? The buzz coming out of day one of Sens development camp is that Tyler Boucher is the best player on the ice. What an amazing storyline this would be should it continue into this upcoming season.
And there's no reason for it not to continue. I think he's kind of tired of bringing it up, and he feels...
You heard that, in his post.
And he feels kind of like guilty, like using excuses, but you have to look at the concrete evidence that the last even 2 years for Tyler Boucher has not been your typical pre-draft year and then draft year. So he has not had the opportunities to really succeed. So I think he's going to prove all those Tyler Boucher haters. And sure, you want to say the Sens reach for him at 10? That's fine. Who cares where he was drafted at this point? He's a part of the Ottawa Senators organization. And you don't... 5 years down the road, you don't care that the Senators could have got better value at guys that were picked 2, 3 picks around that area. It doesn't matter at that point, because Tyler Boucher is going to have good years developing. He's going to get more ice time. I think the move to junior was massive for him to get more games in than he would in the college schedule. And I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong, and we're cheering for him.
Absolutely. Great guy to cheer for. He's going to come back on the show. And after that, it'll be his 3rd time on the show. He's already a friend of the show at this point, recurring guest. So
Williams Martian's son. We've adopted him on the show.
Yeah, we certainly have. I love it. They've got, he's got Tyler Boucher, and so do we. But then we have Tyler Clevin. We love the rough and tumble prospects here, and just overall good dudes as well. Same with Ridley Gregg looks mature than what we saw last season. Like the last time he was on this show was right after the preseason, after his little sussy, but he looks like more mature, bigger, more confident in his body. Talking to the media yesterday, you can go find those at Senators, and we love the Sens social team, man. Matthew Perry does a great job there putting out videos too. So they put out a nice day one recap. Love DJ Smith's address to the team. Definitely worthwhile to go over on Twitter at Senators. They just posted that there. We also retweeted it at Sens Central. So great to see Tyler Boucher, big day one of camp. Oh, I said I'd get the schedule up here. So without further ado, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. They will be on the ice 10:30 to noon. So if you're listening to this, you probably already missed it today. But 9:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. And you know why? Another reason, Pilsy, I'll say people should go check out Wednesday's development camp. Because Pierre Dorion is always up in that perch at the Sensplex. If you know the Canada Sensplex, right up there in the perch, well, free agency starts an hour after they're on the ice. So if you're at there, boots on the ground, and you look up, and if you see him on the phone or you see him running away, you could be the one to break the news of a big move here for the Ottawa Senators. But Dev Camp's always a ton of fun, and it's great to see the B-roll that they put out in that video too, Pilsy. Sick goal from maybe the most unheralded prospect, third rounder Oliver Johansson. Had a sick tuck in yesterday's game. And then just finish off the schedule. It ends on Thursday with the 3-on-3 scrimmage.
Yeah, and Ross, someone that I've seen a lot of people shouting out was a guy who I mentioned I love and have a lot of hopes for is Thomas Hamara. He looked like he's really standing out, and I'm sticking to it. I think that he's going to be, at least for the short term, the best prospect out of that draft. Like, he seems so smooth. He seems like a very reliable defenseman, and I mean, anytime you have a guy that's idolized Thomas Chabot and tried to kind of form his game after him, that's a good sign. So I'm a big Hamar fan, and I'm going to be watching out for him as things go along.
We do have to say, though, Philip Nordberg is not there, and he was the top pick in that draft, so we can't compare it to the guy who went ahead of him, of course, Oscar Peterson as well. So later on this week, could be this weekend, but we're going to do draft profiles for all those guys. But there's so much excitement this week in how Pierre Dorion is sculpting this NHL roster. We're going to hold off on the draft profiles for a little bit later on, but Pilsy had the reaction right there after day one, after day two, introduced you to all the new Senators prospects. We expect to have some interviews lined up later on in the summer. But right now, as I started yesterday's show, this could be the most important week of the Ottawa Senators offseason, and it continues right here tomorrow on Locked On Senators. For Brandon Piller, any last thoughts, I should say, because I closed that pretty quickly. Any last thoughts here going into tomorrow, into free agency? Do you think we'll have news to break down by tomorrow early morning when we record, or are we going to have to wait for that noon buzzer to hit on free agency?
I think we'll have some news, but it won't be the big splash. I don't think the Sens are going to make a big splash day one.
Okay. You just heard it there. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. We'll chat tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.